Nanny urged her daughter to leave quickly, but her daughter wanted to take Lus to the hospital. Little did they know, the vampire clan had quietly approached them from behind. The nanny's daughter defended against the vampire's attack with her hands. Faced with the mutated monster, Joan, everyone was scared and immediately started running away. The vampires began to chase after them, but luckily, a beam of sunlight blocked their attack. Then, in a hurry, the nanny and the others hid in the study and tightly blocked the door with a desk.
What's wrong with my mama?
The nanny was so scared that she hid under the table and started praying, hoping that God could help them. At this moment, the vampires started using a baseball bat to violently break the glass. After the door was destroyed, the vampires slowly entered. When she saw her daughter, she began to build up her strength. At this moment, the vampire was shot. Witnessing this scene, everyone was stunned. The nanny's daughter looked and discovered that the person who saved them was a mysterious figure dressed in black. Seeing that this person had no ill intentions, the nanny led the children out, but the black-clad person asked them to stay where they were and ask if the monster hurt them, and the nanny said only her daughter had been accidentally scratched. Seeing this, the black-clad person approached and examined the wound, confirming that it was a blood scratch. He told a few people to get up first. After the nanny led the children away, the black-clad person separately stopped the nanny's daughter, just as the nanny turned around to look. On the other hand, Abraham came to a medical equipment store to fight the Bloods. Since it was closed at night, F started breaking the window. After entering the store, they began searching for UV lamps because it had the same effect as sunlight. While searching, they encountered Vasily. Through conversation, they learned that he had also battled the vampires and knew their weakness was UV light. By this time, he had collected all the UV lamps in the store. Nora hoped that Vasily could share some with them. In response to Nora's request, Vasily agreed. After they came out, they went to the gas station across the street to buy some food. At this time, Abraham greatly admired Vasily. He hoped that Vasily could join their team to fight against the vampires. But Vasily had always been a lone wolf and refused Abraham's invitation. Just then, Abraham saw a vampire heading towards the gas station, so he grabbed his sword and walked over. At the same time, F, who was shopping, also noticed the vampire. As he was about to go out to fight, Abraham directly beheaded him with his sword. Soon, another vampire approached upon hearing the noise. Abraham restrained him with a silver spike gun, and then beheaded him with his sword. At this moment, another vampire prepared to ambush them. Luckily, Vasily appeared in time and attacked him. Then, more vampires gathered around. F immediately went out to help upon seeing this. Silver bullets caused greater damage to the vampires, so everyone fought against the vampires' attack together. An old man was unfortunately bitten on the neck while trying to escape. Jim saw this and quickly ran back into the store. Then, he charged the UV lamp and took it outside, facing the approaching vampires. Jim directly turned on the UV lamp. One vampire launched a surprise attack. Fortunately, Abraham provided timely support and managed to kill that vampire. Seeing more vampires gathering and their numbers increasing, everyone had to quickly retreat into the house to avoid their aggression. Once inside, they looked at the growing vampire army outside, feeling at a loss. Now it was difficult to break through and escape. At this point, Jim ran to the restroom alone to clean up his freshly scratched face. It was just a minor cut, so Jim didn't pay much attention to it. There were still other customers in the store, and they were asking F what had happened. Upon hearing F's explanation about vampires, one woman had a breakdown. Taking advantage of everyone's distraction, she opened the door and ran out. This shocked everyone on the spot, but unexpectedly, the woman managed to run out of the vampire encirclement. Even more strangely, the vampires didn't continue pursuing her. Abraham explained the situation. Those vampires were under control, and their mission was to kill themselves. The store clerk and customers were furious upon hearing this. Ignoring F's attempts to stop them, the two of them rushed out without hesitation. Dutch was frightened and fell to the ground, and F quickly rushed out with the UV lamp. With the tacit cooperation of Nora, Dutch finally managed to be rescued into the house. F was angry about this and told everyone not to sacrifice themselves anymore. Then everyone stood still in place again. At this moment, Nora noticed something on Jim's face. Using the UV lamp, she discovered a nematode worm on his face. F immediately started searching for tools and took Jim to the warehouse for surgery. Suddenly, there was a loud noise from the roof, and Vasily and the others quickly went out to investigate. They found the vampires trying to find a breakthrough at the gas station. Meanwhile, F had already started the surgery. He made a large incision on Jim's face and used forceps to remove the nematode. Then F placed it on the table, and Nora used the UV lamp to kill it completely. Just then, the door was smashed open by a vampire. F and Abraham came to deal with him. At that moment, Abraham noticed something was wrong. He immediately rushed out of the store and indeed found a vampire trying to sabotage the power supply. Abraham aimed at him, but was ultimately a step too late. The power system was destroyed, and the whole gas station plunged into darkness. Now they could only rely on the remaining UV lamps to fend off the vampires outside. At the same time, cries for help came from behind. F immediately went to support them. By now, the vampires had already rushed in through the back door. Everyone had to retreat again and use the shelves to block the vampires' attack. Now they were caught in a dilemma, and the UV lamps could only last for another 20 minutes at most. Their only hope was the van outside, but it was too far away. They needed to make thorough preparations to have a chance to escape. Then everyone searched the supermarket for any useful items. They used alcohol to make Molotov cocktails, as fire was also a weakness of the vampires. However, F noticed another nematodes on Jim's forehead. He approached and removed Jim's clothes, and under the UV light, they saw hundreds of nematodes wriggling inside him. This shocked everyone present, and Jim fell into despair. He knew he would definitely turn into a vampire, so Jim hoped F would kill him. But F didn't want to give up on his longtime friend and said they would go to the hospital for treatment later. However, the Redfern-less fate in the hospital haunted Jim. This kind of virus was incurable, and the group began to argue fiercely. Just then, there was a noise from above, and Abraham says it's too late if we don't get going. Vasily directly shot Jim, which was met with condemnation. But the most important thing now was to leave this place quickly, otherwise, they would all be buried here. As they started to move, the vampires broke through the last line of defense. Everyone formed a circle with the UV lamps, blocking the vampires' attack. But the battery was running out and they had to get into the car quickly. Then Vasily threw the incendiary bomb he had just made, and the fire indeed stopped the vampires' attack. The crowd just fought and retreated. And then a few people came to the gas pumps. They're going to blow up every single Strigoi in the gas station. Vasily poured gasoline on the ground to start the fire. F took the opportunity to run over to the supermarket delivery man who had just been killed and found the car keys. The others were still fighting against the vampire army. The UV lamp quickly ran out of power. At this moment, F opened the door of the truck, and everyone quickly climbed inside upon seeing the situation. After throwing the last Molotov cocktail, Vasily also got into the car. At this moment, a vampire tried to stop the car but ended up being turned into a pile of flesh after being hit. The gas station exploded in the next second, and everyone successfully escaped from the vampire's siege. On the other side, Zach returned home to find it in a mess. Just as he called out for his mother, Matt, who had turned into a vampire, walked out.
Oh my God!
At this time, F and the others also arrived at the house by car, and he planned to take his son to a safer place. But as soon as they entered the house, they discovered vampire attacking Zach. F immediately rushed forward and stabbed him with a knife. Nora and the others who were waiting outside heard the sound of the fight and quickly ran to support. F picked up a shovel and knocked the vampire down to the ground, and then shoveled his head off. After finishing, F quickly checked if his son was hurt. Fortunately, there were no bite marks on him, and the others outside hurriedly came over. F quickly calmed his son's emotions. Abraham asked F where the basement was at this time. He wanted to check if there were any other vampires. After hearing this, F approached and said that if they found Kelly infected, he hoped they wouldn't do anything in front of his son. Abraham agreed, and then F came back to Zach to ask where Kelly was. Zach said he didn't know, but that his mom had a fight with Matt this morning and left. F was relieved to hear that. Soon after Abraham finished checking the house, there was no other blood here. Upon seeing this, F asked Abraham to take Zach to the antique store. F stayed here with Nora to deal with the bodies. Abraham told F to burn them. Felix was accidentally invaded by the bloodworms and slowly began to feel unwell in the prison. Gus immediately found a prison guard and hoped that a doctor could examine Felix's condition. However, the guard was impatient and said that there would be a dedicated doctor to check after they were transferred to another prison. Soon, Gus and several inmates were squeezed into a car. During the journey, Felix's condition worsened, and Gus asked about his health. Unfortunately, the driver was bitten by a flesh spike and lost control of the car instantly. The car crashed to a stop by the roadside. Then a prison guard quickly got out of the car and opened the back door, but as soon as he entered, he was bitten in the neck by the vampire Felix. Gus took the opportunity to find the handcuff key on the guard and quickly freed himself. However, he also caught Felix's attention at this point, so Gus grabbed the gun from the prison guard and threw the key to the other inmates before swiftly escaping from there. On the other side, Abraham led the group into his secret base. He knew well that the vampires would nest in the sewers, so let's hope that Vasily, with his years of experience as a rat hunter. Upon hearing this, Vasily immediately agreed without hesitation, but he needed to make a trip back home to get some tools. Meanwhile, F and Nora took care of the vampire bodies and performed a cremation outside. Afterward, they entered the house, feeling mentally exhausted from recent events. Under the four eyes, the two seemed to have reached some kind of tacit understanding. The two of them lay exhausted on the ground, but at that moment, someone barged in. It turned out to be Diane. She came here because she couldn't contact Kelly. F asked Diane to leave the city quickly. On the other hand, Dutch learns from talking to Abraham that the man behind all this is Palmer, which shocks Dutch on the spot. It turns out that just a few days ago, Palmer hired her specifically to sabotage the city's servers. As a result, the entire city's information cannot be spread. She realized how foolish her actions were. Abraham, upon hearing this, didn't get angry. He knew that human weakness was greed, but it was important to acknowledge and correct one's mistakes. The next day, F found his wife's car on the street, strangely with the doors unlocked. Upon entering the car, he discovered a pool of blood on the passenger seat, which immediately filled F with unease. 32 hours ago, Kelly came home from work to find Matt looking at she evilly. In the next moment, the mutated Matt attacked Kelly directly. This frightened Kelly to the point of being dumbfounded, and she grabbed something nearby and threw it at him. Unfortunately, a worm accidentally splashed onto her face and directly entered her eye. Before Kelly could react, Matt attacked her again. She grabbed something else and threw it at him. Taking advantage of Matt's momentary distraction, she quickly ran outside. At the last moment, she successfully escaped from the house.